Do you want to cut back on your post-holiday alcohol consumption, but dry January is a bit too extreme? Then how about a damp January instead? Unfortunately for us bourbon drinkers, the current non-alcoholic options are less than ideal, at least the ones that I've tried. So how about we drink some low-proof bourbon instead? That will let us save on some alcohol as well as on a significant amount of calories as well. And I don't know about you, but I could certainly afford to cut back on some calories. Hi everyone, I'm Ed, or Bourbon_Obsessed on Instagram, and we're going to take a look at some of the lower proof bourbons out there. I don't know about you, but I generally drink things that are a little bit higher proof, so we're going to look at ones that I think higher proof drinkers may appreciate. As most people know, bourbon cannot be bottled at lower than 80 proof. That's 40% ABV, or alcohol by volume. So if you're like me and you're used to drinking bourbons that are north of 100 proof, you can cut back significantly on the amount of alcohol in each pour by switching to a lower proof bourbon. While that barrel proof single barrel at 135 proof may be delicious, did you consider that you can cut your alcohol consumption by around 41% by sipping on an 80 proof pour instead? Not to mention, as an added bonus, you're cutting quite a few calories too. Calories from bourbon are almost entirely derived from ethanol. Therefore, the lower the proof, the lower the calories. For example, a 1.5 ounce pour of 80 proof bourbon contains 14 grams of alcohol, which equates to 98 calories. Compare that to a 1.5 ounce pour of 135 proof bourbon with 23.63 grams of alcohol. That's 165 calories. Who knew? So switching to the lower proof pour doesn't just cut your alcohol consumption by 41%, it cuts your calories too. So just to review, there's a few different factors that can influence the body and flavor of a bourbon, and these will help us when we look for the lower proof pours. So pot still versus column still. Pot stills are generally going to give you a bit more body than column still bourbon. It's said to have a oily mouthfeel. You may get some richer flavors that are eliminated by the column still. So pot still bourbons are generally going to have more body and flavor at a lower proof than column still bourbons. Also, malted grains. We know that malted barley gets used in bourbon, and a lot of times that's just used in quantities which are enough to give it enough enzymatic activity to allow the starches to be converted to fermentable sugars, and that's usually around 5% of the mash bill. But if you start using a higher percentage of malted barley or other malted grains, those also can increase the body and provide a different flavor profile to your bourbon. The last thing we'll talk about is barrel entry proof. As we know, to be classified as a bourbon, the distillate cannot enter the barrel at greater than 125 proof. Back in not all that long ago, barrel entry proof was lower, 110 or 107, and was only fairly recently raised to 125 proof. So you get different flavors at lower barrel entry proof, and that's because compounds have different solubility in water or alcohol. So if you have a greater alcohol concentration, a higher proof, you're going to get different compounds dissolved than if you have a lower proof where you have more water. And lower proof bourbons are said to have softer, sweeter, fruitier, and richer flavors than those matured at higher proof due to the compounds that are more water soluble. So putting it all together, if we look at bourbons with those factors, that can all contribute to bourbons that are going to have more flavor and body at a lower proof. So I'm going to look at bourbons today that are all less than 90 proof, which is 45% alcohol by volume. And although we're getting into the bottom of the proof range for bourbon, there are still some fuller bodied and full flavored bourbons out there that should satisfy the seasoned bourbon drinker looking for a lower proof pour. We'll start off by looking at bourbons that are medium bodied but still full flavored in this lower proof range. The first one we're going to look at is a relative newcomer from Milam and Greene in Blanco, Texas. It's their Provisions bourbon, and it's 80 proof. It's a blend of pot still distilled bourbon from Blanco, Texas with column still distilled Kentucky bourbon. The whiskey undergoes Milam and Greene's unique Texification process, in which barrels from Kentucky are brought to Texas for additional aging in the Texas Hill Country climate prior to blending. In addition, the bourbon's made with a mash bill of 70% corn, 22% malted rye, and 8% malted barley. So we've got that fairly high concentration of malted grains, as well as the pot still, as well as the Texas climate. And all of that's going to add up to flavor and body that are not often found in a bourbon at this proof point. And if I didn't say what that is, that's 80 proof. So that's what I'm drinking right here. And it's got plenty of flavor and body for an 80 proof pour. And not to mention, it's about $36 as well. So another thing you do tend to save when you go to lower proof bourbons is also some money, as well as alcohol and calories. Next, we're going to look at Brothers Bond Bourbon, another 80 proof bourbon. It's brought to us by celebrities Ian Somerhalder and Paul Wesley of Vampire Diaries fame, but it's a solid option in this proof range. While its flavors are a little lighter and brighter than the Milam and Greene Provisions, and its body a little bit lighter, it still offers plenty to enjoy. It is distilled in Indiana and is a blend of 3 different mash bills, resulting in a composite mash bill of 65% corn, 22% rye, 13% wheat, and malted barley. So it's a 4-grain mash bill, and they don't break out the exact percentages of the wheat and malted barley. Nonetheless, it's got quite a bit of flavors for 80 proof, and it's a satisfying pour. The suggested retail price for the Brothers Bond 80 proof bourbon is around $40. Next, we have the Green River 1885 bourbon. We're taking a little bit of a step up in proof, and this one's at 85 proof. It's made with an entirely new mash bill from Green River's flagship bourbon, and it uses 76% corn, 15% rye, and 9% malted barley, and it was created with classic cocktails in mind. Its flavors are fairly sweet and bright, with a bit of spice at the end, and a light to medium body. It's enjoyable, neat, and held up surprisingly well in an old-fashioned in spite of its low proof. I had to give it a try since they say it's made with classic cocktails in mind, and it really did quite well. Also, it's got a price that's very tough to beat. It sells for $20 to $22 per liter, and as we said, it's 85 proof. So it's another low proof one that's definitely worth giving a try. I don't have the bottle for the next one, but trust me, I've definitely tried it. Old Forester 86 proof bourbon. It always surprises me with how much flavor it has for its proof. While its body is on the lighter side, it's made up for by its fuller flavors. It's easy to drink and enjoyable with plenty of fruit, including the characteristic Old Forester banana, which I always get, I don't know if you all do too, as well as classic bourbon notes. If you give it a try, you may be surprised by it too. It's one that I had forgotten about for a long time, and then we tried it, 6 months ago or so in a blind tasting, and I was very surprised by how much flavor it had. And again, a good value, 86 proof, and the suggested retail price is $22 to $24. Next, one you may not be so familiar with is over at the end here, Country Smooth American Small Batch Bourbon. Now, they also have, I believe it's called Tennessee Bourbon, which is bottled very similarly, but I'm talking about the American Small Batch Bourbon. We don't have a lot of details about it, other than it's distilled in Indiana and aged at least 2 years. I'm assuming that Indiana refers to MGP, now also known as Ross and Squibb, in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. The flavors in this bourbon are fairly bright and sweet, with some spice in the finish, but they are again fairly full for the relatively low proof. There's not a lot of complexity, but it's nonetheless an enjoyable low proof pour. And the price seems to be all over the place online, but I believe the suggested retail price is around $29, and again, it's 86 proof. Country Smooth American Bourbon. And last but not least on our list of medium-bodied, full-flavored bourbons, and this list has been in proof order, so we're now up to 88 proof, is Old Elk Slow Cut Bourbon. And this bourbon is basically a updated version of the previous Old Elk bourbon. The wording slow cut refers to Old Elk's process of proofing down mature bourbon to its bottling proof. Instead of adding water to the bourbon all at once to bring it down to the proof that it's going to go in the bottle, they do it over weeks, which they say helps preserve flavor. This is said to be a blend of bourbons, and at least one component of this bourbon has quite a high malt content and is what their standard bourbon mash bill is. And that's 51% corn, 34% malted barley, and 15% rye, and it's aged 4 to 7 years. And it's blended with other bourbons, although they do not specify what those are. Nonetheless, that high malt content is likely contributing to its fuller flavor and body for its proof, and it's another flavorful, enjoyable pour, making it our final medium-bodied good option under 90 proof. And that's Old Elk Slow Cut Bourbon, 88 proof, suggested retail price of around $40. Next, we're just going to go through some lighter-bodied, low-proof bourbons. Now, these bourbons do fall in our desired proof range. However, they either did not have flavor characteristics that stood out to me as being something that would please someone used to drinking higher proof pours, or their body was on the thin side. That does not mean they are bad bourbons, not at all. Most of them are actually quite popular, and this list includes the number 1 and 2 selling bourbons in the world. So if you are not normally a high proof drinker and are interested in a lower proof pour, by all means, these are worth giving a try. And instead of proof order, these we're going to go through in alphabetical order by brand. So we'll start with the Basil Hayden family. So for the bourbons, we have Basil Hayden Bourbon, Basil Hayden Toast, and Basil Hayden 10-year. And for those who don't know, these are all Beam products. For my palate, these bourbons don't have the flavor and body that a high proof drinker would be looking for, and they are overpriced in my opinion for what they are. In addition, the Basil Hayden Toast is a bit controversial. Some people love it, others not so much, and that's, I hate to say, including me. Nonetheless, they all have a following, and if you enjoy a low-proof pour, you'll want to give them a try. Their suggested retail prices are $40 for the Basil Hayden Bourbon, $50 for the Basil Hayden Toast, and $85 for the Basil Hayden 10-year Bourbon, and they're all at 80 proof. Next, we have Benchmark Top Floor Bourbon. It's from our friends at Buffalo Trace Distillery. I don't know how many years ago. I think it was during COVID, so maybe 5 years ago. Buffalo Trace released a whole family of Benchmark bourbons, which are actually pretty cool because they are all on the relatively inexpensive side, and they all differ in particular ways, so they're very cool to do a flight. I believe when I picked them up, I could get all 5 of them for around $120, so when do you get the opportunity to do that? Anyway, the Benchmark Top Floor Bourbon is the only one that falls in our proof range. It's a relatively light bourbon, but with pleasant flavors and a great price point. As its name states, it's aged on the warm top floors of the warehouse so that, according to the brand, it develops character more quickly. And that's 86 proof, and suggested retail price is $15. Next is Borchetta Small Batch Bourbon. This bourbon from Big Machine Distillery has enjoyable pot still flavors, albeit on the lighter side in the palate and finish. I enjoyed it quite a bit when I reviewed it last year. It's priced at $40 and is 80 proof. Next, we have Evan Williams Black Label, which is the basic Evan Williams bourbon. That's the number 2 selling bourbon in the world. It's a bit on the lighter side, but it has classic bourbon flavors, but not a lot of complexity. But what are you expecting for $13? A lot of people swear by number 2, so give it a try if you're looking for a lower proof, lighter bodied pour. You may love it too. Its suggested retail price is $13 to $15, and it's 86 proof. Next is Jim Beam Bourbon, also known as White Label. It's the number 1 selling bourbon in the world, and I'm not going to belittle number 1, but I've always found it a little bit lacking myself. But I am a higher proof drinker generally. Nonetheless, millions of people disagree with me, and you may too. It's got a suggested retail price of $16 to $17, and it's bottled at 80 proof. Next, we have Remington Reserve Open Season Bourbon. This bourbon was created as a collaboration between Log Still Distillery and Remington. It is a proprietary blend of Kentucky and Tennessee bourbons, bottled at 86 proof in Gethsemane, Kentucky, which is where Log Still Distillery is located. There is a complexity and depth to the nose that I wasn't expecting. The taste, however, is fairly light-bodied, which feels more in line with its proof. Even so, it has some complexity and makes for a satisfying lower proof pour. Its suggested retail price is $40 to $45, and it's bottled at 86 proof. Last on the list is one that I also reviewed last year, and I wish was a little more available. Ship's Bell Blended Bourbon. If not for its limited distribution, this full-bodied, low-proof blend of bourbon and American single malt would have made it into my top recommendations, and that medium-bodied list, basically. If you are in its distribution area, which I believe is Connecticut, Rhode Island, and some parts of New York, you'll want to check it out. It's priced at $37, and it's bottled at 86 proof. So, there you have it. 15 low-proof bourbons that can help you cut your alcohol and calorie consumption while still enjoying the spirit that we all love. Of course, another option to consider is to drink Irish whiskey or Scotch for the month. There are countless full-flavored pours in those categories below 90 proof, although those whiskeys do have different flavor profiles than bourbon. However, now is a good time to continue to drink bourbon rather than foreign spirits, since it will help support the bourbon industry during the tough times that many in it are now experiencing. Unfortunately, dry January will have the opposite effect on distilleries, breweries, wineries, and all the related businesses, bars, liquor stores, restaurants that are also going through tough times related to the decline in alcohol sales. Of course, I'm in no way suggesting that anyone drink alcohol if they don't want to, or shouldn't for health reasons, but I am pointing out how stopping drinking during January has an effect on all the related businesses and their employees. Well, I hope you have a happy damp January if that's the path that you choose, and that these low-proof bourbons can help it pass quickly and enjoyably. Also, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please like and follow us and leave us a nice review. Lastly, we have loads of additional bourbon and distillery information over on bourbonobsessed.com, so go ahead and check that out if you have a chance. Also on bourbonobsessed.com, you'll be able to read the full reviews of all of the bourbons that I've discussed here. Thanks for joining me. Cheers!